Okay, everyone, hello, and welcome to our little training about the self-assessment and community assessment guidance for this year, which was sent out via CSD updates over the past week and a half. If some of you did not receive these documents, first of all, that means that they were sent to the PDs and the executive directors and program directors. We yell at them, but also you can send me an email at elizabeth.stover@cityofchicago.org and I will send you copies of everything. Okay, so I have with me today Victor temporarily and also Megan Shade. Go ahead, Megan. You want to introduce yourself?
I'm Beth's intern.
Many of you have already met her at various things. Megan is going to be handling, helping with the community assessment piece. And then to my left, I have
Rhonda Anderson. Most of you already know me, and I am working with Beth on the self-assessment part of this process.
And there you go. So last year, as some of you probably attended, we had a very kind of thorough and comprehensive training. I think it was 2 days, one on the community assessment, one on the self-assessment. That was down at the King Center last February, if I recall. In addition, we have since had some focus groups that some of you attended on the community assessment and the self-assessment. So just by way of providing some context for this year's community assessment and self-assessment, we're certainly taking many things under review, the focus group discussions, as well as the new performance standards, as well as the alignment of the PFA, PI, community-based programming with our programming that's going to be happening over the next several months to begin July 1. That is the date that everything gets into place. In the meantime, so we wanted to have a process that can take us through the next couple of months. Thank you, Victor. We wanted to go through a process that could take us through the next couple of months. Didn't do anything too new because we know that everybody has a lot on their plate. There's a lot of changes. And it's already February, what is it, the 16th? 15th. It's already February 15th. So we didn't make a lot of changes to anything. So, and we tried to make those changes that we did make from last year, we tried to make them so it would streamline the process and make it more effective for you, make the process easier and less tedious for you and for us. So, and hopefully more helpful for our work with children and families across Chicago. So Megan here is going to go through the community assessment guidance that that we sent out to you. And Victor, can you pull that up on the screen for us? Thanks.
All right. Everyone, I just want to let you know that I have a bit of a cold, so please bear with me.
We need the community assessment.
If I have to cough or sneeze in the middle of this. But you should be looking at right now the community assessment delegate agency guidance for 2017. The community assessment process really launches the grant planning process. It's meant to inform your self-assessment, goals and objectives, and ultimately the grant application. So as you all know, this year, as a result of the new performance standards, the timing of the community assessment changed. Instead of every 3 years with annual updates, it's now every 5 years with annual updates. That's great, less work for everyone. But the standards generally, standards really generally maintain the previous requirements, but they place a stronger emphasis on using data and really speaking to your community's needs, strengths, and resources. There's also a big emphasis on documenting demographics for special populations, including children experiencing homelessness, children in foster care, and children with disabilities. So moving forward over the next couple of years, DSSS plans to launch its full report, the report that's supposed to come out every 5 years, in fall of 2018. We're calling that the quinquennial report. QQ report for short. That means once every 5 years. We Googled that term, so we know it's real news. But we will be launching that in fall of 2018. The goal of that, or that timing, is to better align it with our grant planning cycles, but also to give us time to streamline the community assessment process as part of our focus group meetings. We got a lot of great feedback indicating we could be doing more to share information across agencies that work in the same neighborhoods, be doing more to foster qualitative data collection through interviews and surveys, and we could also provide more detailed guidance to agencies. So that's what we're really focusing on over the next year or so. So what should you do for 2017? Generally, just continue what you've been doing. If you're up for a full report this year, do your full report. If you're up for an annual update, do that. We would hope that to the extent possible, you would try to reflect the new performance standards, though, in whatever you submit. And we've included that on the guidance, just the bare minimum requirements, your community demographics, the number of eligible infants, toddlers, children, preschool age children, and expectant mothers. Again, you see that emphasis on the number of eligible children who are experiencing homelessness, foster care, and disabilities. Community earlyhood child supply and demand. This is old news to you all. The number of eligible children served by your agency by age and by program type. Site information if it's relevant, and any other resources in the community that are also serving children. And then finally, community strengths and needs. Highlighting any education, health, nutrition, and social service needs of the children and families in your community, along with typical work, school, and training schedules of parents with eligible children. That's a new component this year, so strive to include that, but if you can't, no worries. Any other resources you have in your community, any results that you want to share based on surveys or focus groups you've conducted with teachers, parents, or other folks in your community. And then, of course, any additional data points that are relevant to you and your stakeholders. These are really just the minimum. We understand that people want to include more, so please feel free to do that. We are asking that you submit either your report or update to your URSIA contact in Beth by the 14th of April. So it's coming up. But fear not, because we have some great data resources. Scroll down. Okay. So the Young Children in Chicago and Early Childhood Supply and Demand websites are not new to you all. They are those that Shape and Hall puts together for us. Young Children in Chicago includes demographic information and information about community strengths and needs. And then Childhood Supply and Demand is Childhood Supply and Demand. New this year is a relaunching of the Community Needs Assessment tool. And that tool, you all may recall, was put out in 2012 as part of the Ready to Learn planning, but it allows you all to look a more targeted look at the supply and demand.
Right. So one of the things that, oh, who's that?
I have no idea. It came up with Shape and Hall.
Okay. You got some kind of spam coming up. Right, so as Megan was saying, the Young Children in Chicago and the Early Childhood Supply and Demand, those are the websites that we update every year, and that all the data points are searchable by community area. If you recall from the 2012 RFP process, we had a community needs assessment tool that allowed you to put in an address and get data from a 2-mile radius to that address. And that is something that we're working on getting completed and relaunching. It probably is not going to be available by the time that you're submitting the community assessment. However, it is something that we're going to have available by the time you are completing your grant application for 2015. And if these website addresses don't work, as Victor just experienced, what I always do is I just Google them and go to them that way. I can never manage to put an address in the cursor line anyway. So
Okay.
if you want to go ahead and continue with the last two.
Sure. The last two. One is for 2017. I'm sure you're all wondering what DFSS is doing since we are putting off our quinquennial report until next year. We are going to launch or create a new product that is a community assessment in brief. That is probably going to be 10 or 15 pages that really speaks to some themes we're seeing across the city and summarizes the needs of children in Chicago at a very high level. We'll be making that available to you all in March.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that can be assistive as you complete your community assessment. And then one thing that you can't Google is the 2015 community assessment.
Yes.
We have heard is not available to you all yet, and we are working to post it on the Children's Services Chicago website.
Yes, I think the community, so the 2015 community assessment, we're going to try to get posted on the CSD website. I'm going to have Victor send it out with the CSD updates as well. If it can get attached to that, I don't know, it might be too big, or it might be, sometimes it gets kicked back, sometimes it doesn't. You can also reach out to me at elizabeth.stover@cityofchicago.org if you would like me to send you a copy of it directly.
And then just finally, as you all are working to complete your community assessment and trying to incorporate the new requirements as part of the standards, if you experience any issues gathering data or you want to make us aware of any great data source that you're using, please let us know. We're continuing to work with Shape and Hall to make sure we get all the data we need to meet these new standards. And so you letting us know where you're experiencing challenges would be really helpful. So send Beth an email.
Okay, so Victor has left us, so now Megan is going to drive. If you want to put back on the, put on the, yeah, but put on the camera for a second.
Okay.
I like the camera because, a couple more comments about the community assessment. Just as you, I think in the past you haven't always had to submit it to us, but we're trying to work towards getting an understanding of what everybody is doing for a community assessment and trying to look at the various samples that are out there and to see what kind of is a nice kind of mid-range, or what would work as something that we might be able to use across the city as a template, or something as a template that you could build on. But we don't want to kind of create that without getting a better idea of what everybody is doing to fulfill those requirements. So that is the community assessment for 2017. And as Megan says, we are going to be putting out the quinquennial report in the fall of 2018. And in the meantime, one of the things that we have planned for the next few months is try to work towards getting the process that we'll be using going forward for the community assessment, including the template, including focus groups, including having shared resources for different communities available, and maybe bringing people from different communities together so they can work on different sections and really get an understanding of what's going on in communities together. Okay, now we will move on to the self-assessment with Rhonda Anderson.
Good afternoon again, everyone. So the self-assessment and the improvement plan, as you all know, are an integral part of ensuring that agencies are providing high-quality services. The self-assessment process should answer the questions, are we doing the right things, and are the things that we're doing garnering the desired outcomes? And those answers should be gleaned from data sources from every part of your program, including education and child development, health and nutrition, family and community engagement, URSEA, management systems, transitions, and facilities. Results of all of that should be used to set the agency's program priorities for the next year, which should be reflected in your improvement plans.
So let me talk a little bit about the context for this year. We had the focus groups
Mm-hmm.
about this, but we also, and We also know everybody's in transition with the standards, and there's no current monitoring tool out and the like. But we know that we're moving towards trying to get a better, a more logical planning process, moving us from the community assessment through the self-assessment, through improvement plans, monitoring, TNTA plans, and then into the grant application. And agencies that have the Early Head Start Child Care Partnership grant have already kind of experienced this a little bit because their applications are going to be due this spring, and so we've started to try to implement this process a little bit. But one of the things that we're going to try to move towards is kind of breaking up the self-assessment so that the self-assessment gets submitted before your roundtables, and then it's part of the information that's used in those discussions you have with your roundtables. And out of the roundtable will come a agreed upon improvement plan that highlights the program's priorities for training and technical assistance in the coming year. And so that will help us with our planning and making sure that we're giving each agency what it needs. One of the things that we're really trying to work toward is moving from like a one-size-fits-all. That's something that we've maybe done, especially in the past year when we've been in flux. So one training for everyone. Well, different agencies have different needs. Different agencies have various levels of expertise and experience and the like. So not everybody needs the same thing. And so we're trying to work towards a system where we can document different needs in the communities, different needs among agencies, and ensure that we're providing the correct supports for you. And this is one step in that process. So go ahead.
Okay. And so I'm going to move next to the kind of guidance and instructions for the process.
So if you scroll down, Megan.
Yes, please. So at the beginning, the first thing you ought to be doing is developing a timeline for completion of the self-assessment. Then you should be beginning to build your self-assessment team. Your team should include program staff, parents, policy council members, governing body members, community reps, as well as content experts. You all need to establish ground rules, and expectations should be clearly articulated amongst the group. The self-assessment team should divide the assessment into tasks and responsibilities. It will be necessary to review previous program goals and objectives, review grant applications, and any previous monitoring improvement plans that you may have available. Then you should move your focus to other data resources for review, analysis, and evaluation. It is imperative that the team reconvenes and comes together as often as necessary for discussion and clarity. Each program area should be discussed. The discussion should include trends and systematic irregularities. After consensus, recommendations should be listed. A summary recommendation should then be completed and shared with the entire team, and that summary should include any new resources and innovations as well. The data sources should include monitoring reports, both internal reports, things that you find during your own internal monitoring, as well as any external monitoring reports that may be DFSS, it may be some of your coaching staff, anybody, any information that might be pertinent to self-evaluation, self-improvement for the agency and the delegate are what we need included in that process. Prior to the roundtable, your agency should expect to receive a performance evaluation, and that should include, I'm moving to the roundtable.
Oh, let's stop there for a second. So I know that many of you have already started your self-assessment. You've reached out to me and I've said, well, you know, we're not really asking you to change really anything in that process, and we're not telling you what monitoring tool to use and everything like that. So you kind of, the only thing now we kind of went over those basic kind of pieces of the self-assessment process, because that kind of feeds into what we're going to want you to submit to us this year, which is not the page upon page of COPA,
which is not the page upon page,
based on each of the performance standards. And so I think right here, let's just skip up to the self-assessment summary report is what we're going to want You can see it under submissions. You want to scroll down there a little bit, Megan? Yeah, thank you. So Rhonda, take us through what we want in the report.
Agency, as a part of your report, should submit the following documents. The self-assessment summary report should include, at minimum, a list of the assessment team members and their titles, a brief description of your process, the data sources that were reviewed, any findings revealed during the assessment process, the summary of the recommendations for the program improvements, and a sample of the self-assessment report is attached you can use it as a template.
If you want.
If you like. We're not prescribing that you use that, but it is a way to capture all the information that we need and all the content.
I think that the template is no, not that one.
It's at the end.
Maybe if you keep scrolling. Here we go. Yeah, so it's pretty, introduction, methodology, key insights, recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
And that recommendations can set you up for the improvement plan later. If you that kind of sets you up to come to the roundtables when those happen to discuss it. I think the main thing is whatever kind of report you do, try to organize it by standard program area topics so we are able to aggregate information. So we can aggregate it up into a grantee-wide look at things, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that takes us through the self-assessment report, which we'd like you to submit to by April 3rd, a copy to Rhonda, and woohoo, we are trying to put into place a new mailbox for this. So you'd submit your self-assessment report to this mailbox, and that means that Rhonda could look at it, I could look at it, but also your ERC monitor, all the monitors can look at it, and so that everybody who's going to be in the roundtable can have a gander at it beforehand. So that's due April 3rd. There is no page length or anything like that. You don't have to include every little item in it. We really want you to think in terms of, we want you to be thorough, but key insights, not every insight, right?
Absolutely.
Key
and
insights.
Those things that can be quantitatively captured so that we can look at it and say, this is an issue that we want to prioritize for you for the following year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So then you'll come into the delegate agency roundtables. Can we scroll back up, Megan? And these we've been doing, I know, for years, and I think the only difference is trying to get the self-assessment as part of it, and you should bring your key people to the roundtable, including whoever writes your grant, so they're there.
And your fiscal manager.
And your fiscal people. And at that roundtable, there'll be more instructions forthcoming, but the priorities for an improvement plan will be set. So that's one of the things is to, at the end of that template, there are recommendations for an improvement plan, and I'm sure some of the monitors will come in with some suggestions as well. And then you'll collaboratively decide what are the priorities for you in the coming year, what's accomplishable. So complete roundtable guidelines will be forthcoming. If you received the memo, the tentative planning memo, which things can shift. I know that this webinar, for instance, ended up being a little later than we initially intended, but it kind of gives you dates to when to look for things. But it looks like those roundtables are going to happen the first couple of weeks of May, right? Is that right? Yes. Yes. First couple of weeks of May. Yeah. That was my understanding.
Look for the memo with dates.
You have the tentative schedule, but that's when they're looking to happen. So anyway, at that point, you'll come out of there with a draft improvement plan based on the roundtable discussion, and so who the lead will be for your agency will be discussed there. But everybody has a roundtable on a different date, right? So it's a 2 week after the roundtable is when we'd like you to submit. an improvement plan. And we put an example of an improvement plan in the package as well. So you can use that as a guideline. Or if you have, we'll wait till the questions, put your questions in and we'll answer them all at the end. Type them into the box or whatever. Getting back to the improvement plan, sorry. If you have your own improvement plan template that you've been using and that you love, please use it and just, that's what we'll use. Right now, everything is in flux. I think we want to get to a place where we have something that's standardized just to make it easier to aggregate, but ideally we'd look for something that would allow us to kind of standardize the submissions of the improvement plans. So, so attached is a sample improvement plan. So let's scroll down and see what we got here. We went, ooh, not so far. No. We'll scroll up. Let's governing body approvals. So scroll up just a little bit, Megan. What do we got here? Okay. So here's the report. We went over what was required for that. I'm just making sure we went over everything. The next item is the improvement plan. So we've gone over that.
We didn't do the due date.
And so the initially 2 days, but we'll get to those due dates. Governing body approvals. This is the same as it has always been, that the policy council and the board have to approve the final self-assessment and improvement plan.
And there's now certification pages.
And we have a certification page that was included. Here it is. So you would put in, so you insert agency name and all the signatures. This, please submit this with your grant application, I think, and maybe, yeah. So when you're signing everything else for the grant application, when you're getting all those signatures for the grant application, would be the time to get the final signatures on this. I mean, that would be the recommendation. Yeah, go ahead. Well, all right. So if that changes, we'll send it out to you. That was the one that we were provided for. So delegate agency roundtables are planned for Monday, May 1st through Friday, May 12th. More information forthcoming. Improvement plans. So based on the items identified through the self-assessment and roundtable, will be due 2 weeks after completing the roundtable. Improvement plans should be submitted to the agency's lead monitor and the same 2017 self-assessment at cityofchicago.org. So you're going to submit, and then it'll be back and forth to see if there are any additions or revisions needed, et cetera. And we want to make sure that we get finalized improvement plans by June 9th, and then we can move ahead on our end with planning some of the training and technical assistance that's going to be provided in the coming months. The final version of your improvement plan, please submit with your grant application, the fiscal year 18 grant application. And also all the governing body approvals should be submitted with that as well. And that, when you get the funding letter and everything, is when the final date for when grant applications are going to be due will be delivered. There's I think in the planning memo there was a tentative date included. I guess if we scroll down, we can look at some of the, here's the template for the self-assessment report. If you keep scrolling down, you can see a sample of, objective, task, responsible task, resources, date to be completed. Those are the headings that you can use. And that's really it, right? And so, and then scroll down, Megan. So here's a template. I'm not sure if we sent this out in a Word version. If we didn't, email me at elizabeth.stover@cityofchicago.org and I will send one to you.
And if anyone needs resources, just to kind of give you some more information about the self-assessment process, eClick has a wonderful resource page regarding the self-assessment, and I would encourage anybody to go on and read and kind of scroll through the information, because it's really good information and it really kind of helps you to develop your plan for the process.
Okay, so do we have any, I think that there were some questions. Okay, so you read the question out loud and then we'll answer it.
So there is no more submission of the self-assessment in COPA?
Correct.
Not right now. That may change next year, but for this year, we are not using the COPA module for the self-assessment.
Why is the self-assessment due before the community needs assessment, when the community needs assessment is inclusive of your self-assessment?
Well, that's an interesting question. That's when the community assessment is due to us. You should probably be completing it before the self-assessment, right? Because it's supposed to be one of the things that you use in the self-assessment. So that would be why.
We did not provide any templates in Word.
So maybe what we'll do is we'll send that out to everyone. It'll be sent through a CSD update, and we'll include the Word templates.
And we did have one more community assessment question. It was, so is the community assessment no longer due with the FCCH reapplication?
FCCH reapplication. What is the FCCH reapplication? Family Child Care Home reapplication. Do you understand what I was saying about the community assessment? I mean, I'm presuming that your planning schedule is still in place as it always is. So you start your self-assessment and you've already gathered your data, right? Because I know a lot of you are already like halfway through your self-assessment, that you've already started that, and that was one of the things, is that we're not really rocking the boat at all as far as the actual planning process and how that flow of activities works. All we're really doing is changing kind of what happens on the end point and trying to kind of simplify that and integrate it into some other monitoring events that happen and that culminates in the grant application. What was the second question?
It was.
So there's no,
This is due April 27th, not with our FCCH re-F.
Okay, so I think the self-assessment was always due, usually tax day, April 15th. It was never due with your grant application. The community assessment was never submitted with the grant application either for us. I don't know if you submitted the community assessment in the past. Maybe somebody can chime in who knows, but I think the understanding was it was something you did. Maybe you submitted it to one of your monitors.
I think it's your
SSC.
Your SSC. And if that's the case, you should probably still do that, I guess. But my understanding is that by, yeah. Does anybody have any comments on that out there? No, we're not using, we already did that one. So after we answer the question, why don't you hit that little.
Yeah, this is the new one, just to clarify.
We are not using the COPA module this year for the self-assessment. We are not.
And as a reminder, all of this information was sent to the executive directors and program directors.
Right. Everybody got it came out in a CSD update, this information. So that included the community assessment guidelines, the self-assessment guidelines, and I believe it also had the templates on it. But I don't think that this template was in Word, and if it's not in Word, it's not that helpful. So we'll make sure it gets sent out in Word.
We received a comment saying that delegate agencies have not submitted any assessments with grant applications.
That's what I thought, yeah. Great. All right. You know, if you have any questions about the process, you can contact me, Elizabeth.Stover@cityofchicago.org, or you can contact Rhonda.
Rhonda.Anderson@cityofchicago.org.
And probably if you want to talk about it, send me an email and I can set up a half hour so we can talk on the phone or something like that. That's probably the best way to, the crazy schedule here, to kind of set up some time to speak if you have some particular questions or something like that. Or just shoot me an email and I will respond as best I can. Okay. And track down that tentative planning schedule.
Yeah.
If it hasn't come to you from your executive director or program director, because that probably will be very helpful. And I think that having that throughout the agency will be helpful. Okay, there are no more questions. All right. Well, everyone, have a great afternoon, and thanks for coming. Bye.
We're so glad we have this.
Thank you, Carol. All right, have we turned off anything?